Indonesia's economic performance has been one of the surprises of the Asia-Pacific in the decade or so since democracy replaced the authoritarianism of President Suharto. Southeast Asia's most populous nation has become an increasingly attractive destination for foreign investment, despite rickety infrastructure, stifling bureaucracy and intractable corruption. Gita Wirjawan is chairman of Indonesia's Investment Coordinating Board. Gita Wirjawan, thanks for your time.
Hi, thank you. Happy to be here.
In a nutshell, is it democracy or demographics which has been behind Indonesia's ability to attract so much more foreign investment in the past decade or so?
I think it's a combination of both, but I'd like to think that the demographics is something that should not be forgotten, and it hasn't been forgotten by a lot of the members of the international community. And we had a bit of a huge spike last year in investment realization. It went up by close to 60% compared to the year before. And the good part about it is that it is going to the right places, in that it is going to infrastructure and manufacture capabilities, which Indonesia has been wanting to do for a long time. The other good part about the investment money that has come into Indonesia is that a larger part of the money or the capital formation is going outside Java, the island of Java.
Why do you think it is that there is this confidence in investing outside Java all of a sudden? What's happened?
I think it's, you can call it pent up, but I think more and more people are starting to recognize not just the scale, but, we're talking about the simple presence of Indonesia. Indonesia, unfortunately, has been known to the rest of the world as, one of a number of negativities. But as people, the smart investors, take a closer look at Indonesia, it actually has quite an appealing factor, compared to quite a number of the other countries in Asia Pacific, whether it is by virtue of its scale, the population, and the political process that has entailed, I think, stability. And also the macroeconomic portraits, whether it's from a fiscal and monetary standpoint, I think it's got good stories that compare quite nicely with quite a number of others in the Asia-Pacific region.
You talked earlier about investment going into the right areas, into infrastructure and manufacturing. What do you think is driving this change? Is it demand-driven in the case of infrastructure, and why now manufacturing?
It certainly has been, to some extent, demand-driven. There are still some inefficiencies in the economy. The price of a sack of cement in Jakarta cost a mere $5, whereas the same sack of cement could cost multiple times of that in some villages in Papua or some other parts of the eastern part of Indonesia. So the infrastructure, it is a necessity as to bring about equity in the way the economy gets spread out. So it is an interesting proposition for people, and more people from around the world, I think, are recognizing the opportunity in this country.
How much do you think, while we're talking about problems, how much do you think the current deficiencies in energy supply and transportation infrastructure in general are inhibiting foreign investment in Indonesia at the moment?
I think quite a bit, to be quite honest. The lack of transportation capabilities, as much as we can be proud of having sold more than 7 million motorcycles last year, and also more than 700,000 automobiles, which are some of the best stats in Southeast Asia, but we're not building roads as quickly as we should be. I think the view taking going forward ought to be with respect to how we can accelerate the development of these roads, ports, airports, and railroads. And that, I think, we're taking the view on in terms of allocating a good chunk of our fiscal budget for such, and also packaging the public-private partnership for purposes of enticing private investors to jump into the bandwagon.
Corruption, of course, has been much in the news in Indonesia in recent months. To what extent does corruption remain a barrier to foreign investment? Or is the government doing enough to address the issue of corruption?
Look, I think corruption is an impediment to anybody's effort in any country in trying to do things. But the fact of the matter is that, we have been putting hundreds of people into jail for corruption cases in the last 5 or 6 years. And that data point does not, get known by a lot of people in the world. And what people need to understand is that, weeding out corruption is a long-term game. It took 30 years for Hong Kong to weed out corruption. And I'm talking to people who are willing to basically take a long-term view of the country, and I have not met anybody or a lot of people who think that Indonesia is not going to get any better 5 years from today. And these are the guys whom I'm talking to who want to be considering building factories and smelters and what have you in Indonesia. That sort of a long-term, view taking is I think, needing to consider, how we're going to basically take a view on the issue that you raised. And I do believe with more money being put into educating the people, and with basically more and more people taking ownership of what's important for the future of Indonesia, there's a good chance that, our country will be better, whether it's 5 years or 10 years from today.
One final question. Australia has very close relations with Indonesia in many ways, but is still very well down the list as a trading partner. Is this a consequence of a lack of imagination on Australia's part, or does Indonesia bear some of the blame?
Oh, I think Australians have a lot of imagination, but it may not be imagining in the right direction. Look, I think, we're big fans of Australia, and there is no reason for the two economies, which, on a combined basis would be at about, $2 trillion US, not to be, cooperating economically in a big way, whether it's from a trade or investment standpoint. If we look at last year's numbers, from a trade standpoint, it's at about 11 or 12 billion US dollars for the full year. And from an investment standpoint, it's at a mere 240 million US. That is a small potato compared to the $2 trillion context from a combined basis, on a combined basis. So I think there is room for improvement, but I think it's our job to basically PR ourselves a little bit better, and it's probably the job of the Australians to try to understand Indonesia better.
Gita, Wirjawan, thank you very much.
Thanks.